I still remember the smell of that afternoon, roasted coffee mixed with October rain. It's funny how certain scents can transport us across entire decades, as if time were just an illusion that crumbles before a simple perfume in the air. I didn't want to go to that alumni reunion. 40 years since graduation felt like too much time, and honestly, I was afraid to confront who I had been back then. But my daughter insisted, saying I spent too much time alone since Helen died. "Dad, you need to get out of the house. You need to live a little." She didn't know that living was exactly what scared me. The hotel ballroom was decorated with old black and white photos, young faces frozen in 1985, all of us believing we had the world in our hands. I recognized some faces, now marked by the same decades that marked mine. Gray hair, a few wrinkles, but the eyes still held fragments of that lost youth. That's when I saw her. Sarah was standing near the drinks table holding a glass of white wine, looking at one of the photos on the wall with an expression I knew so well. That slight tilt of the head when she was lost in thought. My heart seemed to forget how to beat for a moment. 40 years. 40 years since the last time we were in the same room. She turned, our eyes met, and something in the universe seemed to click into place, or perhaps fall apart. I'm still not sure. "David?" Her voice was the same, only a little softer with time. "Sarah." It was all I could say. We walked toward each other like magnets, unable to resist the pull. When we stopped, there was maybe half a meter between us, but it felt like it contained all those years of absence. "You still take coffee with 3 sugars?" The words came before I could think. She laughed, and the sound was like music I hadn't heard in a lifetime. "You remember that?" "I remember everything." The silence that followed was the heavy kind, loaded with everything we never said. Around us, other people laughed, hugged, exchanged stories of children and grandchildren. But the two of us were stuck in that moment, suspended between past and present. "Are you okay?" she asked, and there was so much meaning in that simple question. "I am. Widowed 3 years. And you?" "Divorced 5 years." She took a sip of wine. "Looks like life didn't turn out exactly as we planned, huh?" We sat at a table away from the noise. At first we spoke about safe things. She was a school principal in Portland. 2 daughters, 4 grandchildren. I talked about my years as an architect in Boston, my son who now had his own firm, the twin granddaughters who made me laugh until it hurt. But then, maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was simply the impossibility of continuing to pretend. The barriers began to fall. "You know," Sarah said, looking at her hands, "when my eldest daughter got married last year, I sat there watching her walk down the aisle, and all I could think about was you. I wished you were there to see it. She has your eyes, you know, that specific shade of blue." Something tightened in my chest. "Sarah." "No, let me speak. 40 years, David. 40 years, and I never quite stopped forgetting you. You were my what if, all these decades. I built a good life, had a marriage that lasted 28 years, raised wonderful daughters. But there was always that part of me asking." I took her hand without thinking. It trembled slightly. "Me too. I loved Helen. I loved her truly. But you were the first person who made me understand what it meant to love someone more than myself. And when I made that decision, when I accepted that job in Boston and you stayed to do graduate school in Oregon, we were too young to understand what we were leaving behind, or too brave to give up our dreams." She smiled through the tears that were starting to form. "You always had that way of making everything sound noble." We spent the next hours talking, not just about the past, but about who we became. I learned she started painting at 50, watercolors of Oregon landscapes she showed on her phone. I told her how I finally had time to play guitar again, something I'd abandoned for decades. We laughed at shared memories, like the time we got stuck in the dorm elevator for 3 hours and made up silly songs to pass the time. "Remember that song?" she asked and began to hum. "How could I forget? Elevator to nowhere, but I don't even care because you're here." We sang together softly, and for a moment we were just David and Sarah from 1982 again. Then reality began to seep in. I checked my watch. It was nearly midnight. "My flight back to Portland is tomorrow morning at 10, she said, as if she could read my thoughts. "I drive back to Boston tomorrow afternoon." The weight settled between us, finding each other after all those years, only to separate again. "I don't know if I can do this," I admitted. "Let you go again." Sarah closed her eyes. "David, we are different people now. We have whole lives established on opposite sides of the country. I have grandchildren who rely on me to pick them up from school twice a week. You have an empty apartment and memories. It's not fair." "What's not fair?" "This," she gestured between us. "This feeling. After all these years, I thought I'd moved on. I built walls so high around that piece of my heart that held you. And then, in one evening, seeing you there with that glass of wine, everything collapsed." We were silent. Around us, the reunion was ending. People said their goodbyes, promising to keep in touch, all knowing they probably wouldn't. "I need to tell you something," I said finally. 10 years ago, I was in Portland for an architecture conference. It was September, and I had an afternoon free. I went to that café we used to frequent, just for nostalgia. I don't know what I expected to find there. I sat exactly where we used to sit. Sarah looked at me, eyes wide. "What day in September?" "The 15th. Why?" She put her hand to her mouth. I was there. That day, I'd gone downtown to meet a friend who canceled last minute, and I decided to have coffee. I stayed maybe 20 minutes. "What time?" "Around 3. I was there at 4:30. We looked at each other, the weight of that near miss hanging in the air. An hour and a half. We were an hour and a half from meeting 10 years ago. "It's not coincidence," Sarah whispered. "It can't be just coincidence. My mother used to say God has timing we don't understand. That some things need to mature before they're ready. Do you still believe that?" I thought for a moment. After Helen died, I had many conversations with God. Some were angry. Many were desperate. But lately they had been calmer. As if I was finally learning to trust life's flow, even when I didn't understand the direction. I think so. Maybe not the way I believed at 22. But yes, I believe there's some meaning to the timing of things. Sarah took my hand with both of hers. "David, I can't promise you anything. I don't know how this would work. I don't know if..." "Then don't promise anything. Not yet." I turned my hand and intertwined our fingers. "But let's not give up without trying. Not this time." "And what exactly are we trying?" "To get to know each other again. Not who we were in 1985, but who we are now. 62-year-old David and 61-year-old Sarah. With our gray hair, our life stories, our scars, and our wisdom." She smiled, that smile that always lit something in my chest. "When did you get so wise?" "At 60, after losing the woman I loved for 35 years. Pain has a strange way of teaching you things. I know. When my marriage ended, I thought I'd never trust someone again. I thought I'd used up my capacity to love. And now I'm terrified. Because I feel something I haven't felt in decades, and I don't know if I have the courage to follow it. I stood and pulled her with me. Come with me. We left the ballroom and went out to the hotel terrace. The rain had stopped, and the city glittered below, lights reflecting on wet surfaces. The air was fresh and clean. "Do you remember?" I said. "When we were students and used to sit on the dorm roof looking at the stars, making grand plans. You were going to design buildings that would change skylines. I was going to reform the education system. And we did those things in a way. Not exactly as we imagined, but we did. We built good lives, raised families, left our mark. But we paid a price. Yes, we both chose our dreams instead of choosing each other. And I don't regret it, because my life gave me precious things. My son, my granddaughters, the buildings I designed. But I can't pretend there wasn't a cost." Sarah turned to me, and there was something different in her eyes, a decision forming. "I have a confession. 20 years ago, I looked for you. I found your office online, saw photos of you at architecture awards. I even started to write an email 3 times. I never sent it. Why? Because you were married. I was married. And because I was afraid you wouldn't remember me as I remembered you. That I had built a version of you in my memory that no longer existed. And now, do you think I'm just a version you constructed?" She touched my face, her fingers tracing lines that weren't there 40 years ago. "No, you're better. You're real. You have wrinkles around your eyes from years of smiling. You have hands that built real things. You have a kindness that only comes from suffering and surviving." I pressed her hand against my chest. "Sarah, I can't promise this will be easy. I can't promise we'll figure out how to close the distance or that our families will understand. But I can promise this. I won't disappear. I won't let fear or logistics keep us apart without fighting. I lost you once. I won't make that mistake twice." Tears finally fell from her eyes, and she didn't try to hide them. "How do we do this?" "One step at a time. You go back to Portland tomorrow, I return to Boston. But we talk every day. FaceTime, phone, whatever it takes. I visit you in 2 weeks. You visit me the following month. We get to know each other's lives, our families, our places. After 6 months, we evaluate where we are. And if it doesn't work, then at least we tried. And we'll have 6 months of beautiful memories instead of another 40 years of what if." She nodded slowly, a smile beginning through the tears. "You were always better with plans than I was. Architect, it's what we do. And me? You were always better at believing in impossible possibilities. That's what great educators do." We stood on that terrace, embraced, while the city breathed around us. It wasn't like the movies. There was no cinematic kiss in the rain or dramatic declarations. It was softer than that, more real. 2 human beings who had lived whole lives, loved others, suffered losses, and now were finding their way back to each other. Not in spite of all that, but because of it. "David?" Sarah said against my shoulder. "Yes?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For still being you. For not giving up on the idea that things can work." I kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for reminding me it's never too late to be brave." That night, As I drove back to my hotel, I realized something. For 3 years since Helen's death, I had lived on autopilot, watching grandchildren, working on projects, but never really living, just existing. Sarah, in one evening, had reminded me what it felt like for my heart to race, what it was to look forward to tomorrow. I called my daughter. "Dad, it's 2 a.m. Are you okay?" "I am, darling. Better than I've been in a long time. I just wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For making me go to that reunion. For caring enough to push me out of my comfort zone." I could hear the smile in her voice. "You met someone. I re-met someone. Tell me everything tomorrow." "I'm so happy for you, Dad." I slept better that night than I had in years, and when I woke, there was a message from Sarah. "Coffee, 3 sugars, thinking of you." I replied, "Guitar, old melodies, counting the days." I don't know how our story will end. Maybe in a year we'll discover it's too late, that we built lives that can't be merged. Or maybe, just maybe, we'll discover true love isn't about perfect timing, but about choosing to keep showing up day after day, even when it's hard. What I know is this: at 62, I learned life isn't about never making mistakes. It's about having the courage to try again. It's about understanding that some loves don't die. They simply wait patiently until we're ready to honor them. And I am ready. Finally, I am ready.